Ever heard of a Black Widow? No, I'm not talking about the superhero.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
Today we're diving into the chilling story of Judy Buenoano, a woman who turned that phrase into a real-life nightmare.
This should be a good one.
We've got court records, news articles, all sorts of stuff.
So we're going to try and figure out how she managed to pull this off for so long.
Exactly.
Hmm.
What finally brought her down and what made her tick.
Right.
But first things first, Judy Buenoano. Not her real name, by the way. She was born Judy Welty back in 1943.
Okay, so she changed her name at some point.
Yeah. I guess Judy Welty doesn't exactly scream Black Widow.
True.
Anyway, early life was rough. Lost her mother young. There are even allegations of abuse by her father and stepmother.
Oh, wow.
And look, we always have to be careful here, right?
Mm.
Obviously, a rough childhood doesn't give anyone a free pass to do terrible things.
Of course not. But it's definitely a piece of the puzzle when you're trying to understand someone like Buenoano.
Right.
For sure. Trauma can have a huge impact. Absolutely. It shapes who you become. And in her case, well, there were already signs of trouble. Teenage rebellion, even some time in prison for attacking her family.
Seems like trouble followed her early on.
Yeah, no kidding.
So she graduates high school, becomes a nursing assistant?
Okay, so seemingly normal life so far.
You'd think so, right? But then she has her son, Michael, out of wedlock in 1961.
That was pretty scandalous back then.
Yeah, not exactly the norm. And then comes marriage number one, James Goodyear, an Air Force sergeant.
Setting the stage.
Because just 10 years later, 1971, Goodyear dies.
Oh, what happened?
Officially, natural causes.
Officially.
Yeah, but hold on, because the story's just getting started.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Not long after, she moves to Colorado with a new boyfriend, Bobby Joe Morris. And guess what?
Let me guess, he doesn't make it either.
1978, Bobby Joe Morris dies. Again, seemingly from natural causes. Starting to see a pattern.
It's definitely getting harder to believe in all these coincidences, especially when you consider that Buenoano benefited financially from both deaths.
Life insurance, inheritance.
Exactly. Big red flags. And wait, there's more. This pattern, it wasn't just with the men in her life.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, in 1974, there was a suspicious death in Alabama. Nobody was ever charged, but still. Then, in 1980, another boyfriend, Gerald Dossett, dies. Again, suspicious circumstances.
So it's like this cloud of suspicion just keeps getting bigger and bigger around her.
Exactly, but nobody could quite connect the dots. Not yet, anyway.
And is this where her son, Michael, enters the picture?
That's right, and this is where things get even darker, because right in the middle of all this, Michael suddenly becomes very ill. Imagine, one day your kid is healthy, the next they're paralyzed.
Awful. And then?
And then, in 1980, tragedy strikes again. Michael drowns during a canoe trip with his mother.
The sources say he was weighed down with leg braces, no life jacket.
It doesn't get much more suspicious than that.
No, it really doesn't. And finally, people start asking questions.
Finally, they started taking a closer look at Buenoano's past, her relationships, all these deaths that seemed to follow her wherever she went.
It's like something out of a movie, right? You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah. Stranger than fiction, as they say.
Yeah.
But for the investigators, it was all too real. They had their suspicions, but they needed proof.
So how do they finally crack the case?
Well, in 1983, Buenoano starts dating a guy named John Gentry. And at first, it seems like just another relationship.
But then there's that car explosion. Gentry gets hurt, but survives.
Right. And initially, it looks like a terrible accident.
But something wasn't adding up.
Exactly. There were just too many red flags. For one thing, Buenoano was telling everyone that Gentry was terminally ill, which was a complete lie.
Why would she do that?
That's what the investigators wanted to know. It was such a strange, calculated lie, and it made them even more suspicious.
So that's when they started looking into Gentry's medication.
Right. They tested his vitamins, which Buenoano had been giving him, and guess what they found?
Poison.
Bingo! Traces of arsenic and paraformaldehyde.
Wow.
Yeah. And those substances, especially in the small, controlled doses she was using, they're really hard to detect at first.
It's terrifying how close she came to getting away with it again. If Gentry hadn't survived that explosion.
It's a chilling thought. But Gentry's survival, it was the break investigators needed. They finally had concrete evidence.
So that's when they went back and exhumed the bodies.
Yeah.
James Goodyear, Michael, Bobby Joe Morris.
Exactly. Exhumation is a last resort, but in this case, it was absolutely necessary.
And they found arsenic.
In all three bodies, significant levels, the pattern was undeniable.
So all those seemingly natural deaths, Michael's paralysis,
Uh-huh.
it was all pointing to arsenic poisoning.
Right. And it's important to remember arsenic poisoning can mimic all sorts of other illnesses. It's hard to detect.
I can't imagine doing that to your own son.
It's hard to fathom, right? But the evidence suggests that the arsenic likely caused Michael's paralysis, which set the stage for his drowning. It was all part of her plan.
It's just cold-blooded.
Hmm.
So why do it? Was it all about the money? The life insurance, the inheritance?
Well, that was certainly a big part of it, but some experts believe there may have been something more going on psychologically. A need for control, maybe. A twisted sense of power.
Power over life and death. That's a scary thought. But with all the evidence they had, I guess it wasn't long before she was caught.
Right. In 1984, Buenoano was convicted of murdering her son Michael and also for the attempted murder of John Gentry. She got a life sentence for Michael's death and another 12 years for trying to kill Gentry.
But she wasn't done yet, was she? There were still the other deaths to account for.
You're right. In 1985, she was also convicted of murdering her first husband, James Goodyear. And for that, she was sentenced to death.
She was the first woman executed in Florida since 1848.
Yeah. And think about this. She was also the first woman to be executed by electrocution in the United States since 1976.
Her case really made headlines, didn't it?
Absolutely. It wasn't just the brutality of the crimes, but the fact that she managed to fool everyone for so long. She seemed so normal, so average. It challenged people's perceptions of who a killer could be.
It's a reminder that evil can wear many faces.
Exactly. And sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who blend in the best.
It's crazy how she got away with it for so long.
It really is. I mean, think about it. For years, she managed to deceive everyone, friends, family, even law enforcement.
So how did she do it? What was her secret?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to her personality. She was incredibly manipulative. She knew how to present herself as this grieving widow, this loving mother.
The perfect camouflage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people wanted to believe her. They wanted to see the good in her, and she exploited that. Plus, back then, people weren't as aware of things like serial killers or domestic abuse.
Right, like it was harder to even imagine someone like her existing.
Exactly. It's a different world now. We're more aware of the dangers. But even today, people like Buenoano exist. People who can charm their way into your life and then...
Use that trust against you. That's a scary thought.
It is. And it's why Buenoano's case is still relevant today. It's a reminder to be vigilant, to question things, to trust your gut.
And it shows how important forensic science is, right? Without those advancements in toxicology, who knows if they ever would have caught her?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. If they hadn't found the arsenic in Gentry's vitamins,
She might still be out there.
it's entirely possible. It's a chilling thought.
So we may never know the full extent of her crimes. But her case definitely changed the way we think about these kinds of things.
Right. It pushed forensic science forward. And it made us realize that anyone can be a killer, even the seemingly most normal person.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the chilling case of Judy Buenoano, the Black Widow, what's the one takeaway you would want our listeners to remember?
I think it's the importance of critical thinking. Don't just take things at face value. Ask questions. Look for inconsistencies. And most importantly, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is.
Great advice. Well said. And if you're interested in learning more about true crime, there are a ton of other fascinating cases out there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Just remember, the truth can be a lot stranger and a lot darker than fiction. And sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who hide in plain sight.
So keep your eyes open. And remember, sometimes the person you trust the most can be the one you need to fear the most.